All right, folks, welcome back to the Radical Independent. My name is Dave, and thanks for being here today. We have a very special guest. Actually, she's been on with us before alongside James Roguski. She's also a researcher, an author, an activist. She's been doing this stuff long before it became cool and hip, which it has over the last few years because of all of the craziness in our society today. I'd like to welcome back Janet Phelan. How are you, Janet?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm actually dazed, confused, and stunned beyond belief, but I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, well, those are a lot of adjectives, a lot of things there. One of the reasons we decided to have Janet back on, that she had reached out to me because a book that she had released last year, which I think is a really interesting book. I haven't read it yet, Janet, but I looked into the preface of the book and the description. Let me read the description from Amazon. Amazon is still selling this book, but your publisher, and we're going to get into that. Your publisher apparently has decided to not, sell your book anymore and to promote your book. But here's what it says on Amazon. I think this is a pretty interesting lead in. It says, from lead pipes in Flint, Michigan, to a duplicitous water commission in Medford, Oregon, to a secret psychiatric ward at UCLA, to the elegant halls of Palais des Nations in Geneva, that's Geneva, Switzerland, at the breaking point of history, that's the title of the book, relentlessly details the US government's indifference to the welfare of individuals and to its legal obligations under national and international accords prohibiting human experimentation in biological and chemical weapons. Janet Phelan, uncovers shocking machinations executed at the highest and lowest levels of power, pointing towards a pandemic of as yet unrealized proportions. So Amazon released this book last September, it looks like. Janet, is that correct? Is that when the book hit the marketplace?
That is correct. It officially released on September 15th of last year. Yeah.
And the book apparently is okay for Amazon.com, but your publisher recently sent you I don't know, a notification or an edict. I don't know how you want to describe that. Tell us what happened with your publisher. Are you
Yes.
there? Okay.
Yes, I'm
Okay, go
here.
ahead. Sorry.
Okay. The book is published by Trine Day, which is a small publishing house in the state of Oregon. And I was referred to Trine Day when I was putting together the book as a sort of a courageous and alternative sort of publishing house that would publish out of the box material. And indeed, Chris Milligan, who is the publisher, bought the book immediately, and we signed a contract, and that was last year. The book came out in September of 2021. And as of the 26th, Chris Milligan has informed me he is pulling the book. He is making it no longer available anywhere. Indeed, it is no longer available on the Trine Day site. And he is going to pulp, and that means destroy, all remaining copies of the book. Now, that's an interesting sort of thing to do. Now, what makes it even more interesting is why he chose to do this. I sent him an email a couple of days ago. I want to be clear, I've gotten no royalty checks from the book. And Chris is obligated under the contract to produce royalty checks twice a year. And he failed to produce checks or accountings in September, finally was contacted by another show host and urged to do so, and told me, I'm sorry, there's no royalty checks for you. Now, one of the problems here lay in the spreadsheets he sent to me on how the book was selling or not selling, and I had some questions. So I sent him an email, which you have, David, which politely expresses some concern about, shall we say, some irregularities in the spreadsheet, and I simply wanted to have a further, more in-depth reporting of book sales. He responded to that by saying, I'm pulling your book, I'm destroying all remaining copies, go F yourself, essentially.
Wow.
So under our contract, of course, we have a clause that gives me the right to request in-depth sales reports. So so my book is being actually attacked by the publisher.
Yeah. It's just
Now
unbelievable.
we know we're living in a time where there's a lot of inhibition of information. Doctors are being called on the carpet for saying things about the pandemic. There are some unique revelations in my book that you simply are not going to find elsewhere. I took a very different tack in putting the book together. As you know, David, I've been reporting on biological weapons and the biological weapons agenda since around 2004.
Yeah.
And so I had a wealth of material, mostly going into not into the legal sphere, you know, how laws were changed in order to enable a pandemic scenario. What sort of activities did the US actually engage in, not only in terms of human experimentation, but also in terms of violations of treaty accords in order to smooth the way for a pandemic. Now, the research in the book is incontrovertible. It is heavily footnoted. There are no theories or speculations. This is a work of journalism, and so I suddenly find that my book has been attacked by its publisher, who is trying to make it completely unavailable because I asked questions about the sales.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, do you think the book was selling fairly well? So you have no sales information? You were trying to get sales information?
I have weird sales information. For example, the first run of the book was done in September of 2021. The first one was pretty small. It was about 500 copies, and it sold out within a month. And so, but suddenly, the book stopped selling. The book is selling briskly before it's published. There was a little bit of advanced publicity. It's selling briskly. It sells out really fast. And then suddenly, according to Chris Milligan, it stopped selling. It stopped selling.
Yeah.
So I'm on the air. I'm talking about the book. The book is now available. It's being reviewed. It's being talked about, but nobody's buying it. And I thought that was kind of suspect, confusing. We'll just use the word confusing. So when I contacted Chris, I simply asked for an in-depth sales report, and he responded by basically saying, your book's history, go away. I'm breaking the contract. I'm terminating the contract, go away.
Now, do you have any legal standing where you could?
Oh, I certainly do. He broke the contract.
Yeah.
There is no stipulation. You were afforded a copy of the contract as well. There's no stipulation in the contract for him doing this. And he seems to believe that he can do whatever he wants to, and the contract be damned. He was already contacted by a retired attorney, a friend of mine, who basically read him the Riot Act and said, you know, this is illegal. This is borders on criminal. You cannot do this. And you know, Chris doesn't seem to really care.
Without,
which raises,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
it raises, well, particularly the issue of destroying the remaining copies of the books, what we're calling the book burning, right?
Right.
It has been suggested to me by another friend who has a master's in legal studies that by so doing, Chris is actually destroying evidence of how many books were even published, because we don't know.
Hmm.
When I tried to ascertain how many books were published on the second run, the first run sold out in a month, and there was a second run, and I asked Chris, and he refused to tell me. So I exercised what I thought was my right, and I contacted the printer to find out how many books were printed, and they informed Chris of my inquiry, which was, again, polite and not accusatory, just simply trying to ascertain. And Chris went into a tailspin, and he, at that point, began to say, "Just take your book and go away. How dare you? How dare you try to find out how many books were printed?" It got very weird, and I decided to simply ignore the challenges that he was putting forth in the email. How dare you? Just be as nice and sweet as apple pie, and just continue on, because frankly, I think the book is important. The book takes a perspective and produces information and documentation that you simply cannot get anywhere else. And I stand by the content of the book. I am proud of it, and I want it to be available. Even if there's some sort of knockdown, drag out fight over the royalties, I still want that book available because I think it's important.
Right. Now, I don't know too much about when books go to market. Does he have the manuscript? Do you still have the manuscript? How
Of
does
course
that
I
work?
do. Yeah, I have the manuscript.
Yeah.
We have a contract, and he has the rights to, I believe, for 3 years to publish the book. I don't
So
see anything in the contract where he has the right to unilaterally decide to not publish the book and
yeah.
destroy all remaining copies. I don't see that at all.
Now, because he terminated the contract, I would assume that would allow you to shop the book around and go somewhere else to publish the book. No?
Yeah, I think it probably would, except he doesn't have the legal right to terminate the contract. He
Yeah.
simply
Which
doesn't.
and
And
that's
if I am misreading this, if I have sent the contract out to legal professionals to look at it as well. So this is my understanding of the contract. He doesn't have the right to do this. And I need to say a few more things about this because the story is so bizarre.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, he I was suggested when I was putting the book together, a former RT America host, Sean Stone, who had me on RT a couple of times, suggested that I take the manuscript to Trine Day because of its reputation as being sort of, bold and going where no man goes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I, on the recommendation of Sean, I sent it to Chris Milligan, and he gobbled it up right away. Now, everything was fine for about a month, and then there began to be some evidence of reluctance on the part of Chris Milligan, and there began to be some problems in processing the book. I'm not going to go into all. I saved all the communications, so there really isn't any question about what my concerns are here. I'm not going to go into every little detail here. I'm going to give one example. When we were at the point of preparing the copy to go out to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and various places, Chris proposed some copy, and I thought it was dreadful. I said, "No way, I don't want this as the sort of public copy advertisement, so to speak, about my book." So we put something else together, and we both agreed on it. We were happy with it. And I found out soon afterwards that he sent out the old copy everywhere and put it on Trine Day. So I said, hey, we got a problem here. This is the unapproved copy. And he said, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, as it turned out, there was something he could do about it. He could have pulled it immediately. And I found out about that months later in a conversation with the marketing director, who offered to fix it. Oh, yeah, we can fix that right away. And he did.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris put out the wrong copy, which was dreadful and not in any way reflective of the contents of the book, and refused to correct it. So that is one example out of many of some what I'm calling glitches and slips that began to take place in terms of marketing, publishing the book.
Yeah.
So I made a decision that I was going to take these as glitches. I was not going to raise any sort of accusations or concerns about this. We'll just simply correct them and move on.
Mm-hmm.
But there were so many that it began to be of concern. So when suddenly the book's selling like hotcakes, it comes out and then stops selling. As soon as it's available, stop selling. And I get no royalty checks. A year later, I got not a single royalty check. I have to ask,
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't ask for an in-depth sales report?
Right.
So that is more background about the situation. But I'd like to expand this a little bit, because we know that people who are questioning the official narrative about coronavirus, who are putting out anti-vaccine information, countermeasure information, who are looking at this in all sorts of different ways, are facing some degree of silencing.
Mm-hmm.
People's Twitter accounts are being removed. Facebook accounts are being attacked. I've had that happen as well. And in some cases, doctors such as Meryl Nass, whose medical license was suspended, revoked,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and she has such a history of brave and marvelous work. Simone Gold goes to prison. I mean, we have so many things happening to people, but I think in the annals of reluctance to put out alternative theories about coronavirus, in the annals of that, I think a publisher attacking his own author and pulling her book that he's already published is something. It's a new blip on the screen, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that's fairly unprecedented. I've never, when you sent me the message, I said I was confused. I was like, your own publisher canceled your book? It took me a minute to process that. I was like, yeah, I think that's kind of interesting to talk about, and I agreed to that. Now, Janet, your book, obviously, I don't want to give away, the plot of your book. I would hope people would go out and purchase a copy from Amazon. Let me share that link again. I had it up, and I'm going to put it up again just so folks can see it. I just ordered a copy today, and as much as Jeff Bezos irritates me, that book will be probably delivered to my house on Sunday, and here it is Friday. The business model, it's very irritating that he is this good at what he does. But I've noticed there have been a lot of books. Like I ordered The Bodies of Others by Naomi Wolf and got that very quickly. I own a copy of The Real Anthony Fauci by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Got that right away. In fact, there's a nice documentary that's out there if people don't like to read books, that you can go to his website and watch that for free for, I think it was 10 days. But I've seen it uploaded over on Odyssey, which is one of those rogue platforms that, people go to when they're looking for the lost information that was once available to them. So in any event, I would urge folks to go over to Amazon and order a copy of this. I don't know how many copies they have, but apparently you can earn 36 points through Prime if you order this on paperback right now. And I just said, okay, sure, I want to read the book, but without giving away too much of the details of the book. You talk about how this comes in at a different angle, that you may take approaches or do some. You've had a background of doing lots of research, and I assume my guess is this might be classified stuff or U.S. military stuff, or I've been kind of fascinated lately with the geoengineering stuff that is going on in the atmosphere. And some people are going to think I've really lost my mind, but we just had this huge hurricane come through, and I question all kinds of things that I didn't used to question. So what approach maybe that might have, who knows, maybe somebody reached out to this publisher from somewhere. This is just speculation, because you have to speculate, because you have nothing to go on other than, gee, we stopped publishing your book, go away. I mean, that's extremely rude. And the fact that he's not
possibly illegal.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But what, maybe if you were to look at your book and say, what is the tripwire, or what could have been a tripwire, and without going, you don't have to, like I say, I want people to go and purchase the book. But what angle maybe or approach that you took? And I'm sure there's several things that you probably did in the book.
There are a number of things in the book.
But what would be, say, the top three that may have just driven them crazy?
Okay. There is a chapter in the book called Justice in the Time of Corona that goes into details concerning a sort of pet project, an issue that I've been focusing some of my attention on, which has to do with the vehicles used to compromise and corrupt public officials, particularly judges. And I have actually stumbled across a mechanism which can be validated through public records that indicate a particular vehicle through which judges are being bribed and paid off. And there is a particular federal judge who is discussed in that chapter, who took some action in a particular federal case. And astoundingly, the kind of research that I am doing on this appears to be having a real effect, because the litigant in this case, this was a tax case, and the litigant was a tax protester and had accumulated quite a bit of research as to why he really didn't owe any taxes, and this judge was going to nail him. I mean, the guy was going to lose everything. And furthermore, the judge, his name was Michael B. Thornton, was threatening the litigant with $50,000 worth of sanctions if he continued to promote the arguments he was promoting. Upon publication, the judge simply evaporated. It's been 2 years. He never made a ruling on the case. He just dropped it and slunk away. And this is the kind, he was going to ruin the litigant. And the litigant is now happily living on his farm in Georgia, not paying his taxes and being left alone. And it is this kind of response to the research that we're seeing repeatedly. So just parenthetically, I've been teaching online classes on how to do the research, because this is a method that I particularly stumbled upon and refined. And so I think it's important that many, many people know how to do this. And so the next webinar is actually going to be held in about a week. So that is one level, of concern, but it gets a little deeper than that, because the book discusses a pandemic delivery system that is entirely apart from concerns about someone sneezing on you in a bus, or or a vaccine or anything. It is entirely separate from that. And the documentation that I have accrued concerning this delivery system, which has to do with infrastructure, is pretty airtight. I know some people think I've really gone out on a limb here, but I believe again that the documentation that I've published in the book, which includes blueprints and more, is pretty much incontrovertible. So I think if, for whatever reason, the book seems to have gotten, it seems to have occupied sort of a singular space now in the panoply of coronavirus books we're seeing. And simply because of certain kinds of information that it contains.
Right. Well, it's fascinating. Just hearing you talk about it is a real primer for wanting to know what's inside that book. It just, as somebody who has just been dumbfounded by the hypnosis. I know there are theories out there about mass formation psychosis, and some people just think that people have been compromised. And I think that was certainly a part of what I think could be going on here. You mentioned the judges being compromised, but then you go to all facets of society where you're looking at doctors who are compromised. You look at health officials, if you want to call them that are compromised. You look at the education industrial complex, which seems to walk in lockstep with everything else, and your kids become victims. And it really has this sort of spiraling effect where it goes to every area of society, and just the ordinary person's trying to make ends meet just to provide for their, I always say this, people don't have time to get wrapped up in all of these crazy, I don't want to call them conspiracy theories, because you just give the other side, ammunition to say that you're crazy, or that you're basically saying it's, but I've thought that certain things were at one point kind of out there. Like I'm just not going to even give this any time, because it just sounds so far-fetched. And then here we are 2 years later, and the people at the beginning of this who were sounding the alarm, and I'm sure you were one of them, those people have all been vindicated. They've been proven right. The only thing that hasn't happened yet, Janet, is all the details haven't come out yet. All the information. I mean, the narratives pivot here and there, and you get admissions here and there, or you get, you don't get retractions. You look at a website and all this stuff was up there, and now that stuff isn't there anymore. But they're not saying to you, we were wrong. All they're doing is they're removing stuff. People say the new expression is they put it down the memory hole. It's not there anymore. So what are your opinions on just how deep this goes? Because this, to me, this is a global crisis. This isn't just, hey, we need to elect a new president, or hey, we need to move the chairs around on the Titanic and hope for a better outcome. This is this is something that my more religious side, my more Christian side says this is just demonic. This is just beyond what I can come. It's like I can't process it. You get the overloaded computer. That's me. The brain just shuts down. Do you feel that way sometimes?
Well, I feel like I'm living in a very bad science fiction movie, and that is peopled by creatures that are approaching the undead. I mean, can I say it any clearer than that? The amount of collusion and complicity and cooperation, well, all those three things are a bit different, that went on with this narrative is absolutely stunning. And it doesn't reflect very well on the human race. It doesn't reflect well on our ability to process information, or our ability to say, wait a second, I don't want to go there. I'm here in southern Mexico, and in Mexico, particularly in the state I'm in, Chiapas, there were very few restrictions that were handed down. Um, and people began to realize very quickly here that if you got sick with something and it looked like COVID, and if you went to the hospital, you didn't come out. And people began to sort of trade information about herbs. There's a very strong interest in natural medicine and herbal medicine here. And people began to realize that if you got sick with something and you stayed home and drank tea, you'd be better soon. So there wasn't a lot of cooperation that went on here. However, walking down the street, you see tons of people in masks. So again, there was a division between people who went, wait a second, I don't think that's the way I want to go. And people went, oh, I better mask up because I might breathe in something bad. So I happen to think that Chiapas was more awake and aware than maybe many other parts of the globe. But looking at what happened in the US and the amount of fear and rush to do exactly what you were told without even considering that there might be a problem, it's very worrisome. And it doesn't point well towards future scenarios and future sorts of responses. Personally, I don't think, and I think we were discussing this before the show, David, I don't think there's a clear political solution here. I think the solution lies within people becoming aware that there were problems that surpassed human error, that there appeared to be intentionally inflicted problems, and the people simply have to come to grips with the fact that our leaders haven't appeared very trustworthy. And so my hope is that people will continue to seek out information and learn about the real nature of the world we're living in. And I happen to think that my book makes a contribution there. So having it pulped, burned, destroyed by his own publisher, is just another blip, another indication of the times we're in. I really appreciate your having me on to talk about this, because obviously I think that the issues far surpass my little book and my personal experience. I think the issues that this illuminates are really rather massive. And I think we should really attend to efforts at censorship.
Right. Amen to that. Well, I sit here and I'm just listening to you, and it's frightening that, and I've said this in other videos, even on, I have 2 channels, and even on my more music-based recreational kind of channel, I've just raised this argument that it seems like there's a real lack of intellectual curiosity, or but it goes beyond that. And that's why, some of these theories that are out there about this idea of like a mass formation psychosis, or, you mentioned, the bribery, or because you have to say, okay, so why isn't anyone, because everyone's afraid to lose their job, Dave, because everybody's afraid if they speak up, people are going to think that, they're crazy, or There's somebody in their midst who's an expert. I heard this a lot at the beginning that, oh, well, the experts, I consulted an expert. My wife was told, she's a medical assistant, she was told that, she refused to do what I call on the other channel, I have a phrase, doing the thing. And they said to her, well, are you smarter than our doctors? You're a medical assistant. How can you think that you're smarter? So there's almost like this caste system and this information system and all of these different systems that are in place. And obviously the government, which is a bigger system. And I've recognized that when people say, well, the president of the United States said X, and I say, well, you understand that there's another executive, right? And they look at me kind of strange. And I say, well, there's another executive. There's the president, but then there's an executive. And that doesn't mean that there's one person. There could be multiple people that are that executive. I know that's a little complicated, but it's kind of a new thing that I've started saying. And people don't realize, and I'm not just saying, the president is a puppet. The president might have a little bit of leverage to say one thing or suggest something, but it's very limited. And it seems that the executive could be on a global scale. And I'm wondering if you've tapped into any of that, look to maybe one place, maybe on the globe, or just one area where a lot of this command and control has filtered down to governments and even to individuals in a way that it's truly frightening that it's been this effective. Like this was something, and I think you kind of tapped into that has been in the works for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm. Well, you bring up very interesting questions, David. It seems pretty apparent to me that there is a global impetus here, and that various, what we used to call sovereign nations are involved in this global impetus, and that if you stand apart from the impetus and possibly refuse to engage in it, you may end up like the president of Tanzania, who found COVID in a papaya, and he was really poking fun at it, and then he killed over dead, right? So I think there are various mechanisms that are being used to ensure complicity and cooperation, but who is pulling the strings here? Who is really in charge? That's farther than I can see.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a global group who are have certain agendas that they are trying to push through,
right?
But who they actually are and where they meet and can I come talk to this is beyond what I've been able to figure out. People talk about Davos, they talk about the Bilderbergs, they talk about the Freemasons, they talk about the Jesuits, the Jews. I mean, everybody's got their favorite, but really, good golly gee whiz, who knows?
Well, it's obviously something to ponder. Janet, how can I guess I heard your Facebook, you were a Facebook group administrator, and you got put into permanent Facebook jail, which I guess that's a life sentence, I guess, right? I mean, you can't get out.
Well, according to Facebook, they're going to delete my account. I'm trying to find a way to deal with this. I have two Facebook accounts, and they're both have been suspended and they're threatening me with deletion, but they won't tell me why. So the best way to reach me right now, I think, is through Proton Mail. And that's janet.phelan@protonmail.com. Really simple.
Yeah.
So Facebook doesn't seem to be viable anymore for me.
No. Well,
Yeah,
there.
and also, I just want to mention that my articles appear on Activist Post. I've been writing for Activist Post for about a decade now.
Mhm.
I really like what they're doing there, and I'm very, very appreciative of all the support and encouragement I've gotten through their editor there. And I think they're just doing a fantastic job. So you can read my articles there as well.
Activistpost.com.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. And I'm going to share the screen one more time for the book. This is Amazon.com. And I'm not trying to be all like I'm showing off, but I did order this book today. It says right up here that I purchased the book on October 28th. Hopefully it's going to be here on Sunday, and I'm definitely going to be digging into this book. But you can go to Amazon.com and order a copy. It's only $17.99 for the paperback version. Was there ever a hardcover, or was it always a paperback?
No, it was always paperback. There's also an ebook
Oh,
that's
yeah.
quite a bit, that's possibly half of that or something. So
Right.
there's an
I
ebook as
think,
well
yeah,
for
let me
those
just go
two.
back and share that again, because obviously it says you can get it on Kindle. But yeah, they say it's in stock, Janet. So that's a good sign. So at least for the time being, and you have the manuscript, and it's forbidden information, and that's, human nature. When you tell human beings not to look at something, not to drink something, not to smoke something, as much as I know, that certain things aren't good for us per se, but as soon as you do that, people instinctively want to know, how come I can't look at this, or how come I can't eat this or drink this. So it's interesting, and I'm glad you came on today, because this really exposes how deep censorship, the level of censorship is, when the publisher is willing to pulp your book, which is essentially incinerate, destroy, burn, whatever, however you want to categorize it. It's truly frightening, and I wish you the best. And you're welcome to
Thank
come
you.
on this channel anytime you want to discuss any of your upcoming projects or seminars or anything you'd like to discuss with us.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate what you're doing, David, because we need as many people as possible out there who are saying, wait a second, let's look into that a little further. Well, what's really going on here?
Yeah,
That is the path, I believe, to our ultimate liberation. So thank you so much.
you're welcome, and thanks again.